Hi, I'm your host Eric Smith, and this is the Low Budget Review Show. Today I'm going to talk about a very powerful book, something a little different from what I usually talk about, and that is 400 Days of Oppression by Rath James White, and this is published by Bloodbound Books. I finished this last week, and I've been planning this review. A lot of things I want to say, and I've been trying to think of the best order to say them in, hit all my points. I think the best thing to do is start with what the book is about. So, this book is about Kenyatta and Natasha. Kenyatta's a black man, Natasha is a white woman. They're in a relationship, and it's a very powerful relationship, and one of the issues, one of the things that comes up in their relationship is race, of course. Sadly, it's 2014. I don't know why race is an issue, but it still is. So it's something that comes up in their relationship. So one day, Kenyatta proposes an experiment. And he says that if Natasha can succeed at this experiment, he'll marry her. They can get married. And what he proposes is this. He says that Natasha can never know what it's like to be a black person unless she's experienced what black people have experienced. And he has this book called 400 Years of Oppression, which is a chronicle of everything that the black people have gone through, from being stolen from their homes in Africa, the trip across the ocean, being auctioned off as slaves, being slaves, the emancipation, that short time when it seemed like things might be getting better, and then the Jim Crow laws and everything. So this book, 400 Years of Oppression, chronicles everything from different accounts. So the experiment is, Kenyatta wants Natasha to go through 400 days of oppression, one day for every year, and truly, as close as possible, experience what black people went through for 400 years. So that's the basis of what this book is. A very quick overview, or at least the setup. Now, my first point is, this is not a book for the faint-hearted or the easily offended. The sex and violence in this book is extremely graphic. So I'm just warning people. I'm not saying don't read it, but it's a very strong warning. And of course, race is a big part of what this book is about. And as I said, sadly, that's still an issue in this day and age, and some people are offended by, or may be offended by, what they see in this book. Read, you know what I mean. So I just wanted to get that warning out there, that this is a very, it's a very gut punch of a book, I suppose. So there's that. The reason I read this when I did, because like so many books I have, and quite a few that I've reviewed, I've had this book for a while. But someone wrote a review on Amazon, and a negative review, is 1 star, and said the book was racist, or at least the story was racist, I suppose. They also said they didn't finish the book. So I moved this up to the top of my pile of books to be read, because I have faith in Rath James White, and wanted to see what this particular reviewer was talking about, and how reading the whole book might change how one sees the story if they've only read part of it. So I moved it up to the top of the to be read pile, and well, obviously I read it, and I think people are going to say that it's racist. Obviously, someone already has. People might say it's misogynistic. I'm going to tell you you're wrong. It's neither one of those things. There is racism in the book. There is misogyny in the book. Yeah. But the book itself is not racist or misogynistic, excuse me. I do know quite a few people that have a problem separating characters and story from, characters from story. People think, okay, the main character is this sort of person, that must be what the story's about. That must be the message that the author is trying to pass on. And I think that's an issue that some people have. But I just don't think that's the case. Sometimes it might be the case, but it's not always the case. You can tell a story about bad people without being pro-bad people. You can tell a story that has these negative elements without being for those negative elements, or even with that being what the story's about. So it's not a racist book. It's not a misogynistic book. It is a very difficult book. Wrath James White, one of my favorite authors, and I think he's a fantastic writer, and this is just a prime example of the power of his writing. It's very well written. The characters are fleshed out. It explores a lot of issues, not just race, but Kenyatta and Natasha are involved in the world of BDSM, or S&M for the uninitiated. So there's a lot of that in here. And it's all handled, I don't know if I can say tastefully, because as I said, it's pretty extreme, but I don't think it's gratuitous. It's all part of the story, and it's part of the characters, which is why it's not gratuitous, because it's who these people are. Something I find very interesting is the majority of the story is told in the first person by Natasha. I'd love to hear Wrath's reasons for that. To me, it kind of changes the way the story reads a bit. Because we're hearing about these trials and tribulations, that is sugarcoating. We're hearing about these things that Natasha is going through from her. We're in her head, so we understand why she's doing what she's doing, why she's allowing what's being done to her. And I think if the story were told in third person, or first person from Kenyatta's point of view, I think it would read completely differently. So I think going with Natasha's point of view was a great choice. And the book, there's a little prologue, but it starts 2 weeks in, I believe. Starts 2 weeks into the experiment. That's what they call it. So right off the bat, we're right in the middle of this. And throughout the book, Natasha fills us in on background. We learn about her, learn about how she met Kenyatta, learn about how their relationship grew, what led to the point where they decided to do this. And there are the prologue is in third person. There are three chapters towards the end that are in third person, but the rest of it is all Natasha, and she's an interesting character, a well-rounded character. I mean, you learn where she came from, you learn where she got to, and I think you can understand as the reader why she's doing what she's doing. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then that's a tribute to Rath James White's writing. That we can sympathize with something that a lot of us probably would think is crazy, what she's doing. And even the excuse that she's doing it for love, seems a little crazy. But we get to know her, and I think we can understand why she's doing this, why she's willing to be put through this. But yeah, it's a really powerful, very graphic stuff. I want to emphasize that. I highly recommend it. I think it's a fantastic book, a powerful book. But I know there are people out there that don't like the violence and the sex and the profanity. I just earlier today read a review for something else, and the reviewer just talked about the potty mouths of the characters, and wow, now I can't even remember what that book was, but I know it was nowhere near as powerful as this, as far as that sort of thing goes. The extremeness of this. So again, just making sure we're all on the same page. But I recommend it for anybody that wants to maybe test the limits of what they're going to read, what they can read. Not something I'd recommend to my mother. I can say that much. Simply because it's a little too extreme for her. She's not the type to watch Hostel or a Serbian film or Martyrs. I'm not comparing this to those in any way, except those are considered extreme movies. This is a very extreme book. Of course, some people think those movies are gratuitous. Again, this is not. Rath likes to tackle some interesting subjects. And as always, I recommend any of his work. But he puts some interesting twists on different subjects. I think this might be... See, I'm not sure how to put this. I don't want to say less extreme. I don't want to say more realistic. I'm thinking about some of his other books like Hero and His Pain, or Population Zero. That's the one that I was really trying to focus in on. That one, Population Zero, is takes a very divisive subject, and he puts his Rath James White twist on it. Well, that could even be similar. Boy, it's hard to... I don't want to give anything away, as always. I mean, there are a lot of things in here that I would love to talk about, but I think you need to read it, experience it for yourself. Some people might say I've said too much already about it, plot-wise. I was considering just reading the back of the book, the back cover copy, but I decided to go my own route. If you're a Wrath James, well, let's see. Wow, I was going to say if you're a Wrath James White fan, I think you're going to like this book. But that review that I talked about at the beginning that made me push this to the top of my list, that person said they were a Wrath James White fan, and they did not like this book at all. But again, they didn't finish it, and you really need to read the whole thing, so that it's all in context. Seems a tough one to review. And there will be no low budget review show theater for this one. So anyway, it's 400 Days of Oppression. A powerful, well-written, thought-provoking novel by Wrath James White. One of my favorite authors. Probably just a short time ago I would have just called him a horror author and left it at that, but he's not just a horror author. Well, I mean, he writes poetry. It's horror poetry, but maybe I'll give a little shout out to his book Vicious Romantic, which is, I don't have it in front of me, so I don't remember specifically. I know it's haiku, and then I believe 2 other forms of Asian poetry. I don't remember what they are. That's an amazing book. It's pretty much horror poetry, and he touches on some really heavy subjects, but it's beautiful. I think haiku is a beautiful form. The other 2 forms, which I wasn't familiar with before reading this, are beautiful. The succinctness that you must have when you're writing in these forms, and it's very aesthetic as well, because you have this little tiny 3-line poem surrounded by a huge white page, and it sort of drives it home. So a little shout out to that one. And I might as well, if it's still available on Amazon, I'll put a link down below in the description for that. Of course, I'll have a link for 400 Days of Oppression. There you go. Not sure what else I can say about this. It's an amazingly well-written, hard-hitting, extreme book, but well worth reading. 400 Days of Oppression, Wrath James White. He's done it again. I can't wait to see what he does next. So that's it. Not as full of belly laughs as normal. But anyway, so as always, if you have any questions, comments, or corrections, please leave them in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'd love to hear what people think of this. If you have any questions about some of the content, I suppose there's a way to talk about it in private. I don't know. But anyway, that's it for this episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I'm Eric Smith, and read more books.